output through ay. Good enough. It works. Now we start the timer. Yeah. Now I share the stream. I copy this link. I paste this. I mute this tab so that we don't have to. No, wait. How does it sound? It sounds amazing. It sounds beautiful. Next is Discord. Yeah. Good morning. I need to lock the fuck in. Oh, I actually remember what I wanted to say, so I am happy. Paste this. Next is this sauce. I feel like I am forgetting something. Let me open this and this and mute this and close this and open this and that and this and that and all of those wonderful things. Yeah. Next, this. I cannot be this. It's not even a sleepiness. What the fuck is it? Old age. Similar enough. Anyway. Guitar riff? Wait. You are just starting. Calm down. Wait, give me a second. It needs to copy this. It's so over. On my way. Give me a second. I saw it. Don't worry. I just move slowly because I have to also set up everything else. Here. You can hear it? Let me see. Can you hear it? Yeah, I think. Or else I'm going schizophrenic. Yeah, you can. Okay. We have it. It's like incredible. it's in the background. It's like a distant memory of it. So yeah, we have it. Anyway, good morning. It has been a good handful of days since the last time. This time is actually true also. So long ago since the last time that we were here. Fuck, can happen. Can happen. I don't know, something about I'm not really like anywhere in the same position, but if Ludwig can take like an entire month off, why can't I? You're not Ludwig, brother. Yeah. Also, I'm sorry. Maybe it sounds misleading. I don't know how to play guitar. I used to. The story is I used to, and I actually forgot how to. I don't. My God. I used to. I don't know anymore how to. It's fire. It's Kino. I think it's linked on the about section somewhere. The reference for it's from Ichika Nito. Yeah, I wasn't wrong. I was like Nito or Ito. No, Nito. Ichika Nito. That guy is like good enough. He used to be seen as an actual I swear to you. I'm sorry. Anyway, I was saying, yeah. He used to be seen as an amazing guitarist, but then it ended up being found out that he actually doesn't play the guitar like all that well. He splices, which in reality is not that bad. It's literally what every single person who records videos, who records a proper song does. You pick the best version possible, you record the same thing 20 times until you get a good enough take. But for some reason, in the music community, that's seen as something bad. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not one to such in terms of I have no clue why that was the case, but yeah. Anyway, let me set up two more things, and after that I will leave for a second. I want to. Do I need to say it? I don't know. I want to share. Is it bisexual? I don't think so. I don't know. I just want to admit that certainly I have been taking drugs. No, I have been consuming some creatine, and I think it's quinoa. So yeah, I need to go do that. I need to do that before we actually start, because otherwise, I will forget. Like, yeah, today we take creatine and then I choke on it. No. Uh, Let me use this image for today. There we go. Let me also one more text to set up, please. No, you know what? I am going to change that text when I'm back. Let me now go get my dose right now. Also, sorry I didn't say anything. Welcome, big guy. I hope you're fine. Very good, I think. Yeah, it should be good. Anyway, be right back. Hey, dear God, I'm not tired, I guess. No, I literally took a nap, so probably I am somewhat asleep. Anyway, give me a second. Good morning. Wait. Good morning. Here we are. No. Here we are. Not yet. Let me... Why is the reef not activated? You wanna... There we go. Yes. Okay. There we have it. Some reason? No, it's not for some reason. I had the source turned off, so it was rightfully turned off. Anyway, here we are. Good morning. Now for real. Let me... No! I was saying, I need to finish setting up the today thingy. What's the topic for today? There we go. That's the topic. It's way too big. Let me change it like this. There we go. A little bit tinier also. Like that. Yeah. I don't know. Probably we should have something like a timer, because in reality I'm not going to directly jump into it. It's like the bait. It's the other people do something like, yeah, we sit on the just chatting screen for 5 hours before playing the game. Okay, here we sit on the just chatting screen 5 hours before actually talking about what matters like the most. Slop. No, don't say that, don't say that. It's good. Anyway, good evening. As I said, it has been a long time since the last occasion that we were here, like a week. So yeah, I know that's bad. For me, it's bad. I don't really feel that happy about that, but I don't know. I quite honestly hated last week in way too many ways. What a sad thing it was to be there. Like, I don't know, way too many things. The reef is back. It's literally a redeem. It always was there. You could always summon it whenever you felt like summoning the reef. But yeah, welcome, Spike. Hope you're doing good. It's back indeed. But yeah, what? Yeah, I don't know, something about the whole aspect of having to certainly admit that last week, I don't know, I was incredibly tired. It was exhausting for way too many reasons, and I did the celebration, quote unquote, stream. Then after that, I did have to take the next day off, because I was expecting that was gonna happen. I hadn't sung in so long, even if it is just karaoke, that I ended up with my voice completely killed. So yeah, that was that. And after that, I don't know, I fell on a wormhole, and here we are, 5 days after. So yeah, good morning. It's good. I needed to speak more, not speak more clearly, channel my voice. How do you say that? Like, focus on speaking directly into the microphone. And that's something that I have a hard time doing, because, I don't know, I have the tendency of, for some reason, I do it as if I was actually, like, speaking with someone. And when I speak with someone, I'll do the same thing, where I am constantly moving my head around the available space that I have. So, I don't know, I forget that I should stay still for the microphone to not have any problem picking me up. But, it doesn't matter. That's fine. What's good is that we can work with whatever we have right now anyways. So yeah, point is, good morning. It's good to be back, and yeah, I don't know, it has been a good handful of days, I have to admit, despite, like, I literally am contradicting myself, despite what I said of the whole avenue of shitty experiences, it's also good to have some possibilities to keep thinking out what you care about and such. And yeah, I don't know. I figuring the world out is always a challenging idea, concept, notion, desire, because in the end there are way too many things that we must consider in one way or another, and it is fine to try to do it, but to actually get to a proper conclusion is quite difficult, not because the action itself is all that hard, simply because one doesn't really learn, gets taught directly, let's say. Not that you can't learn, you don't get taught properly, given the tools to actually identify how to process all of those far more immense questions and such, and so we end up here for one reason or another, trying to answer something that does not possess directly, at a first glance, an obvious reply, response, answer, so it's sometimes it's hard to actually have anything to say, but at other times anyways, as I was saying, having that tiny distance is useful in the end. The world offers so much to have an idea about and of, that as long as you're willing to do that, there is no way you can't end up with some sort of lesson or some sort of experience to reflect on and such. So yeah, it's something that I quite certainly wanted, not that I went for that directly, but it happened anyways, so here we are. All that matters is that we now have we are back, so good enough. And as I said, yeah, I don't know, things, stuff happening on the background also, as always, like, how to say it otherwise, I don't know, making sure that other projects keep moving, I guess. Now that I also did the whole, yeah, let me show you what I have been working on, I don't have any more the excuse of saying, no, yeah, you know what, since nobody knows, nobody is aware what I am doing, so that I can slack off incredibly on all of that, because it doesn't matter. It's also useful to be willing to do that other aspect of it. Sometimes there is this basic, incredibly basic and simple analysis of how we tend to react to expressing the information and expressing or hopes and such to other people, in terms of whenever you say what you want and what you are thinking about doing and such, you will most certainly end up in a particular space simply because you are forcing something to happen with the thing in comparison to what the other person is gonna give you, so that it becomes then this idea which, as you hear the other person affirm it, you now believe that you don't really have to worry so much about accomplishing it. The notion of you might as well already get what you want simply from expressing the desire of it, even if the action which leads to the actual accomplishment of the goal which you can express isn't at all performed, the simple expression of it is in one way or another good enough to make it, to give you some sort of false satisfaction, I guess. Also, where on my rest, I suddenly have none, nor any sort of better looking model. What's the name? Like, I don't have a chest either, like a buff body in any way, so it's over. I am sorry, but welcome, say. Hope you're fine. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like, yeah, I was saying, I feel like that happens way too much. The thesis end up being, yeah, you know what? You you will say what you want out, the things that you're trying to do, and you will automatically give up on them. Not always. It doesn't have to work like that. You can also realize how useful it is to see that the other people might in one way or another have some sort of expectation towards what you reveal, and if you don't really accomplish what you express, what you show, what you have in the works and such, there is always going to be that the lingering sensation of, holy fuck, what happened with this? Yet another failed thing? Unbelievable! So, that also serves as a motivating factor instead of just being a tool for self-pleasure and something of that sort, where you don't really work anymore towards what you hope and such. So yeah, it's... we're working on things. I don't know. If I have to say anything, I have to admit that actually trying to edit is... I was picturing it as trying to edit is in so many ways the same thing as when I had to, when I was younger, make some sort of homework or presentation for when a teacher asked me, can you present something about this topic? And it's in so many ways the same. Unavoidably, it's not the same, and the parallels between something like actual editing and all of that sort of work and the eternal ideal of school or university or whatever, where things like, yeah, spaces like between always end up is glaringly unnecessary, but at the same time, it's not really that hard. It's not like, oh my god, it's impossible to edit. I don't know. We are working. The point is we are working, and we shall keep working. So yeah, anyway, with that, and I don't know, as I said, also, they have been slowly working on other things, working on being, not, while it is a healthier person in itself as a concept, the concept of not suddenly dying when I am 40 or so, trying to have more self-preservation in multiple ways. So that's also quite an interesting thing going on. And yeah, I don't know. For now, we get to be here, and I am happy enough that we get to be here. And I am also happy, as I said before, that I have any sort of clue of what I wanted to talk about. So yeah, here we are. I don't know. I have to admit also, there is like, the background for all of this is, I don't even know how the fuck I ended up reaching, like, I am still amazed by how ideas in themselves operate, in the sense of, sometimes you might forget entirely how it actually feels to just suddenly get stricken by the realizations of your unconscious mind, so to speak. Sometimes you might completely ignore that, yeah, something is going on in the background, something is being thought about without you consciously being the one who thinks about it. But the realization comes, and at some point you get given the possibility of actually taking it or moving on from that. And I have to admit, it was, if nothing else, it was good enough, because it actually led me towards something that I feel like is quite interesting. I have to also say, one of the few problems that I have so far with this is, I feel like there is also something funny that happens in most cases in the absorption and processing of information in itself. It's not so much about the rationalizations and the discoveries and the ideas that you yourself can have, but there is a part of the processing that happens in the background in terms of something funny that occurs is, you're going to take in all of this information, you're going to learn about all of these things, you're going to acquire all of this knowledge in a crystallized manner. The knowledge itself is going to be a sterile, specific thing, and only after a certain amount of time, then you will finally properly acquire the recognition for what it truly means and what it truly entails within the given context of everything else. And you might believe that the ideas belong to you. You might believe that these discoveries yours to own. You might now say, yeah, I am the person who has reached this conclusion, when in reality it's just the natural extension of what you already gained before, so to speak, what you already were offered and what you already were capable of seeing, let's say. I mean, I'm sorry, man. I have to admit, I don't know. I didn't say anything. It's my stream. I can trauma dump. I was like completely out of it. I forgot that we were going to play. So I had an exam earlier, and I was like sitting with the screen turned off once I got to my home because I fucking failed that exam, and I was like, holy shit, unbelievable. So at least I had fun. I fucked up entirely. I'm not gonna say that I didn't, but it was fun. And I swear to God, it wasn't intentional anyways. Like, now I am slowly getting more accustomed to it. At that point, I think I only had like 15 hours or so with the game, probably even less. So now we're slowly getting better at playing CTA. I still need to play more. I am like only level 20 or so right now. I still need to keep grinding and such, but it's good enough. It's good enough. For now, we're working towards things. But anyway, like literally tomorrow, so we will see. Tomorrow, the improvement will be noticeable. Will it? I don't think so. No, we hope that it will. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know. Okay, yeah. I was on the part of. And the idea is, I feel like whenever you get 10 tasks to reach the proper integration of some form of knowledge, it becomes quite hard to actually understand if it belongs to you or not. But while that is a possible answer to obtain, a possible question to try to propose to oneself and whatnot, like, is this idea truly mine or not? Doesn't matter. Sometimes what matters is the possession of an idea in itself. Where it came from is not so relevant, not as long as you're capable of actually understanding what it means. If you need to do the whole process of decomposing what brought this thing forward and whatnot in a more formal analysis of thoughts and ideas and such, that's good, that's useful, that's necessary also, obviously. But in this case, it's fine. We don't need to worry. I have no clue. That's all of that text is simply to say, yeah, I have no clue where this came from. Probably I heard about it before. Probably I thought about it myself. Probably I stole it from some other place. Probably, I don't care. And I don't know, and we have no way of knowing. If you see something similar, I don't know, leave it in the comments. But yeah, anyway. Besides that, any other important thing to say? I don't know, I don't think so. Yeah, I think we're good probably. So let me hire it, and after that we shall probably start with this, because it's probably going to be long. That's all that I can confirm so far from this, because yeah, it might in one way or another take. I know this. I know it's a complex idea simply because it has way too much information to try to process in itself. Like, when I was describing, okay, yeah, let me say this before, no, after hydrating. The idea is the moment in which you have to understand some things that are way more connected to what is in front of you and what's not than what you can simply so quickly realize is the moment in which you might need to stop for a second and truly try to decompose out of what makes the thing be what it is. And in that process, you end up with a lot of other bits to analyze, and that's good, but it's still a lot of work to do. Like, as long as you're willing, it's a beautiful experience, but it doesn't make it any less work. Like, you have in front of you way too much to handle. Not that it is impossible to handle, simply that it's too much. No matter how amazing of a thinker you are, it's a huge pile of thoughts, I guess. So we shall try to make the best out of what we are being offered. Yeah. So let me start then. Let me see. I believe one of the few ideas that I always hold is, if anything is true in these current times, is that despite the problems, despite how we face the world in itself currently, there is an abundance of information. There is quite a huge area of knowledge to access, and there are a lot of things to learn about when you look out there, simply because it's possible to realize, to see, to acquire all of the things that can be in one way or another accessed by the act of both possessing some sort of question that moves you towards the discovery of the answer, and the advancements towards the accessibility of knowledge in itself. In terms of knowledge became far more accessible since we have now gained access to something like internet. Like, all of this only makes sense as long as we are capable of having these sort of conversations, which can only be performed through internet, which thus means as long as you possess something like internet, in this current era, you might as well have access to as many ideas as you want, or to so many notions that you might not even be capable of realizing how much is out there available for you to know. In that sense, I think that we are in a golden era, in a perfect time for people to learn about things. In the simplest way to say it is, there is no moment, there hasn't been in history any other moment like this one currently, where there has been as much information available for free, probably, as it is right now, so that everyone could see it and access it. The problem, one of the many problems that exists, like the big, most obvious direct conclusion is always, but sadly it is, when we do have a lot of tools and access to all of that, there is the issue of, but we're not really all that good at making sure that people actually learn about any of those things. We're not really in a good time, in a good position to actually let others realize and grasp and gain an understanding about how many possibilities they have about learning and whatnot. We are not giving these tools out and promoting what is available. Information in itself exists, but at the same time, there is no divulgation. Is that how you say it? Let me see. There is no sharing. Simply, let's not so much of a complex word. There is no sharing of the possibility of accessing the information in itself, while the information is available. The problem is that it remains inaccessible, for it is unknown that it is there to begin with, so it's quite hard to ever find yourself interested in moving towards that place. And it's in itself, it's not something so troublesome, because in reality it's quite easy, as long as you can grasp that, yeah, if you want to actually learn something, you can just, I don't know, look it up. You can, maybe it's not so simple. You need to have a clear, as I said before, you need to possess a clear question that you might want an answer for, and you need to understand how to navigate the interwebs, so to speak, so that you can acquire the knowledge if you want, without having to pay anything, because in the end it is available, and it is nowadays is accessible to anyone who knows how to utilize the tools themselves well enough, so that you don't have to actually just be impeded by the monetary factor. But some pieces of knowledge, some particular pieces of knowledge in itself, do have the added weight of still being hindered by different paywalls and whatnot that you can still bypass and whatnot, but they are still in themselves enough of a barrier so that if you don't really understand how to go over those, you might believe, okay, this piece of media, this piece of this paper or whatever is not really available, and you might truly then believe that are either locked out, or the only way in which you can access that is by paying, let's say, which then thus might really not be the correct conclusion, so to speak, simply because, once again, you are just making it look like, indeed, there is nothing else to do but to just assume that you have to, in one way or another, force yourself to, yeah, to give up some monetary factor in order to access the information, which my previous point is, it doesn't really exist like that. We're in a time in which knowledge is available for free, and the problem is, this much can be true. You can have the opportunity of exploring. You can learn how to do so that it doesn't become an issue that when you first become a user of internet, you don't know how that works. You can then slowly get to accommodate yourself and navigate all of this virtual space, so that you can then find how to get to what you want to actually know about and such. But there is also something else that I have seen, like this thing. This is the other conclusion that I don't see being discussed about in any place. There is something funny that happens, and that is, we live in an era in which there is so much information available that we have piles of data. We have a proper visualization of it would be something along the lines of, well, before we used to simply have some fields filled with so many pieces of information, of knowledge, of discoveries about them. Nowadays, most of the fields themselves have entire mountains of discoveries. And here is the problem. There is something wonderful that's happening. We're in an era in which the individual is being impossibilitated from processing what might be the correct answer towards things. Particularly, this makes sense once you see it from the perspective of, we have somehow gotten to a point in which we have so much stuff, so many studies, so many papers, so many case analysis and meta-analysis about different things from way too many sides, and it has come to be that now we have somehow an overexposition of conclusions. We have an overabundance of points, which all the feeling that I have is all of them seem in one way or another to be correct, but in reality, it's not that everything is right. This is the fun aspect. Uh, I I can admit this much. I remember this idea appeared when I was trying to yet again study this whole aspect of how there is something that has always been personally my interest in to some degree, because I know that it works for me, but I would like still to have the possibility of actually offering the evidence for it whenever I have to talk with someone else. It's useful to have anecdotal evidence for things, but even so, that doesn't really mean that what I experience myself out the world will always be what works for everyone else. In terms of, there is this sad reality that happens to be that one doesn't want to believe that they are a unique person in one way or another, but maybe sometimes you do have some encounters with your uniqueness, with those qualities that make you be an individual which has their own special capacities, and unless you can actually find out how much of a uniqueness it is that you possess yourself, you might believe that everyone else might also have the possibility of fitting into that area of uniqueness which you possess. And this means in terms of a different wording, it's not necessary to force people to go through what you have gone through to realize if you are actually unique or not. Sometimes you can actually see what the information itself reveals out certain discussions, out certain topics and whatnot, to then see, okay, I might in one way or another be an outlier. And I might be observing, understanding, grasping that, yeah, this thing that we're talking about does seem to not include somebody like me within the final given results. And that's useful as a point of reference, because you know what you can waste your time on and what you should not waste your time on anymore. Because then you finally get to see that, yeah, you know what? If I fall within the category of the people who also experience these things, and now I also possess the evidence itself for this thing, then I will have a much easier time explaining this to someone else. I don't have to rely on my personal given experience to try to convince others. My discourse gets solidified by the substantial proof of my subjective experience, but also the objective evidence for which I can then thus help others to see, yeah, and this means that if you were to try something like this will help you out. This means that if this concept were to apply to me, it were to also apply to you, it will also be the case that you would find yourself experiencing these things. You, as I think of myself as a normal person, you also should be thinking of yourself as a normal person. It will be delusional that I give you a conclusion and I say, okay, then without any other given evidence, we shall assume that while I got the normal results and whatnot, you will for some random reason obtain the completely anomalous ones. No. If you get to understand something and you get to have that piece of evidence, that piece of certainty, of objective certainty and external validation gained from that part of the knowledge which comes from these sort of discoveries and such, then the conversations themselves find themselves changed. You have as I was saying, you don't have any more to just rely on, I think this works. It's not necessary to just try to convince others based simply on the dialectics, on the discursive elements of, you should try it because it might help you. No. If you were to try this thing, it is already proven that these are going to be the conclusions that you're going to get. As long as you're willing to try this thing, then you will encounter these results, and you will now realize what are the benefits for you. And that means thus that as long as you try this, you might as well gain something, or lose something, or whatever. The point is that is present within also this other field of interest, which I was saying, is, in my case, trying to understand if something like audiobooks is as useful or not. And I remember I have spent a handful of hours studying it, trying to see if it actually works like this, in terms of it actually makes it so that you can interpret information better, or if it actually just makes it so that you get affected in a far more negative manner, and if it actually does help, or if it actually just decreases what you gain from doing so. I have, as I was saying before, I do still have my own personal experience, but that doesn't mean that my personal experience justifies what we all get to see. Even if my personal experience is a positive one, that might truly be just my case. Maybe I try to recommend you, like, I don't know, there are those incredibly exceptional cases of people who, no matter how much they drink, their gut, I think it is, doesn't process alcohol for some reason, in the same way in which they actually get intoxicated. They simply excrete the alcohol for some reason, so you are, technically speaking, immune to alcohol poisoning, aka being drunk. So you can assume thus that it's not all that great to say, if that person were to believe that everyone else is also going to have the same experience as them, they might actually get others incredibly drunk, to the point to which there might be some sort of harm happening to those other people, no? So, in this case, then, it should be obvious that, and I don't know, I am still not convinced of how any of that works, because in the end, the funny thing is, now, here is where my point comes. I said before, returning, representing, how do you say it? Revealing. No. Restating, yeah, let's say like that. Restating what I already gave as the first conclusion, as the basic conclusion, basic premise. In a world of overexposure of information, now, if you want to have a clear answer out such questions, it might sometimes be impossible. In this case being, if you want to learn how audiobooks themselves operate in terms of how useful or negative they are, you're going to find out something absolutely funny. There are some studies made by one group that state how completely useless it is to try anything related to an audiobook, how much you're gonna be wasting your time if you ever go out of your way and consume some sort of information on an audio media. The sad reality also is that these seem to be sponsored by some of the oldest academies, some of the oldest libraries, either public or private, that are out there. So, is this information reliable? Who knows? But at the same time, then, you also have, on the other side, those oh so wonderful studies that seem to reveal that, in actuality, you also do have such huge benefits that they are, if not the same, probably even better than just reading a book, to hear an audiobook. And you know what's the wonderfulness about that? these are also dubious. Because who, if not the fucking audiobook companies themselves, are the ones sponsoring the development of those? Does that mean that either of those two is right? What a wonderful question. I would also wish to have a proper answer for you. And I would also wish to have, at this current moment in time, a clear perspective to give you so that we can actually have an answer for this. But we live in an era in which there is so much simply stated facts without nothing else that it's not possible to truly understand how things operate somehow. If you get to that layer of deepness, you might as well also realize that this occurs. My initial example was that, but the reality is this also occurs so much with so many other things. It's incredibly funny how the field of more concrete knowledge in itself, these representations of objective realities, quote unquote, seems to also be warped so much by these desires, the more popular ones, having stuff like how there seemed to exist an entire interest into making, branding, and representing something like the breakfast as the primal, most necessary meal of the day for a project that was simply aimed at marketing. Was it really necessary? Not so much. The posterior studies after the initial ones were released, where the conclusion was that, yeah, indeed, if you don't have something like a breakfast, you might as well end up dead, and you might as well end up hard and such, contradict the first given evidence and seem to not point at the utter importance of something like that. So, we have way too many of those existing. Like, I think even in stuff like the automobile industry have there been examples of this stuff happening. For one reason or another, we also have had encounters with things like, yeah, you know what? If we want to believe, if we want to assume that cars are better, then you also have these studies which show how walking through the cities and how commuting physically instead of through a vehicle might as well be harmful to your health, might as well be not recommended, because in the end you get negative effects, and in the end your health in itself is negatively affected and whatnot. And all of that has been present to so many things to such a point that now we end up with the final question being, can we really know if all of these things are truly real? I remember a concept, not exactly here, but a concept that is started out as the truth and the post-truth, after-truth and such, the moment in which you get to realize that things pertain to certain contexts and similar, the realization by which we finally got as societies, let's say, to grasp far more directly how, even if you want, in the encounter with the world itself, there is something subtly always going to happen. And it is that maybe for me this is true, maybe for my viewpoint this is a correct analysis, and nowadays we might be living in an era in which most of the information that we get to be given, even if it is so vast and so diverse and such, it only still serves some sort of purpose of which we might not be aware at all. But that's not the main point. the main point is that in itself, truly, it's almost impossible to directly access that link of realization and that stone of knowledge that lets one finally say then, ah, yeah, I can see and I can grasp how these things actually work, and I can so directly come to a conclusion about what is the root of the matter here. We're starting to create entire bodies of knowledge and entire piles and mountains of discoveries, which lead to no change or modification or difference in the world. All that they do is exist in the void of. You just have something that operates as a plausible answer, but it doesn't really exist or gain the status of definite one. We are gaining possibilities. We are not gaining certainties to the degree to which, sadly, we are not capable of actually knowing even nowadays, despite all of these advancements in discoveries and whatnot. We are reaching a point in time in which the person ends up, even after having spent so much of your time already trying to understand things and whatnot, ending up lost and ending up with the inability to actually have a proper clue about what's real. There is the beauty of the most common saying in the culturally normal throughout all societies. It gets represented differently, but it gets also stated along these lines in all of them. The idea of ignorance is a bliss. That's the idea in itself. We live in a state in which it's better to not know than to know, because this starts to apply far more now that we're slowly getting to a point in which you might know what is an available reply for some of the problems that occupy our lives in the current era, in our current times. But you also might get to suddenly realize that, and also some of those other replies, some of those other realizations and conclusions about this very same topic might occupy a space of certainty, real, solid enough that you could believe they actually exist in the same, let's say, like this wavelength of importance. Maybe the most problematic aspect of this is, and maybe they don't even apply to the exact same point. They don't even apply to the exact same aspect of a given topic. But what they do, what they have in common is also, wait. Okay, I'm back, sorry. I had to sneeze. Thank you. Okay, I was saying. And so, one of the funny things that happens as a conclusion of these two is that sadly, you still have to try and make sense out of things in itself. You still have to, in one way or another, attempt to see the world and make any sense. Whereas all the given things to put the picture together end up just making any reachable conclusion all the more confusing, all the more incoherent, irrational, unsustainable in terms of an idea. Like, with examples, returning to what I was mentioning before, if you understand on one side that something like drinking Coke is not really that useful for you, but on the other one, you also have those other studies which seem to reveal that the consumption of Coke might as well be beneficial to you and capable of actually helping your what is it? Your overall capacities throughout the day and such, your energy levels and similar. You have two contradicting pieces of information, and while we are still we are not so far behind in terms of everything is confusing. We do have some beautiful revelations, like for example, we talk about the or we used to talk about the wonderfulness of something like smoking. We used to talk about stuff like the wonderfulness of the consumption of, was it methamphetamines? I mean, most drugs, cocaine, methamphetamines, meth in itself, and many of those other hard substances, opioids also, all of those existed in a bubble of positivity, but after the consequences made themselves evident enough, we now finally get to see that, no, yeah, they are under very strict conditions useful. In all other cases, they are absolutely harmful. Useful in no way whatsoever, unless you truly, truly, truly need it. Consume meth, consume coke, consume any of those things. Those drugs are prohibited from the public for a free open access. It's only under very specific treatments that you can allow yourself to then have a bit of that, and not for recreational purposes, but for highly niche cases. It is that then you finally get to have some to use it consciously. And where this era is slowly building itself up to be moving towards this more conscious realization. It's something that exists throughout many fields, because this is where I also remember stuff like, even there have been way too many studies performed like this, where stuff like, big company sponsors something like the study of the benefits of bread with every single food, to then realize decades later that actually the spike in your gluten is not all that beneficial to you, it's not all that good for your health, it's not all that nice to actually include, it's not all that helpful in any way whatsoever. We also have stuff like how we slowly got to realize that, yeah, while the consumption of milk is not all that bad, you do get some calcium. The incessant drilling of milk almost every single day was also sponsored by companies, it wasn't really all that obligatory to consume it. It wasn't a must of a meal to have. We're in incredibly early stages still, but we might also be slowly opening up ourselves to the possibility of talking out stuff like, yeah, indeed, it might also occur that in the future we might get to see stuff like how changes in diets, changes in the way in which we consume the foods that we nowadays appreciate are important. Like one of the few things that I was thinking about. I don't know how much this is a hypothesis. I am not so sure about this. One of the few things that I was actually thinking about under this whole analysis was when you have to also take into account that we are still in times of proper decomposition of all our previous assumptions about how things operate. It might be that also we were missing important bits about most of our ways of acting in relationship to, in this case, as I said before. I remember when I was trying to study it, like it's not so much of a study, simply see, I guess, if actually consuming something like creatine is useful or not, if it's actually important or yeah, healthy in any way, or if it is instead something that might as well be entirely detrimental and sponsored as great while actually just decreasing your health overall. In the encounter of such pieces of information, you get to see it's something. Creatine in itself, in this case, creatine is something that actually is found within most red meats. It's not something that we get to just create in a laboratory environment and in an artificial environment. Yeah, it's not something that we can only see and only have access to if we dedicate ourselves to science, so to speak. It's something that you can actually possess simply if you have. There is like I don't know how popular. There is a certain type of diet which I have heard of enough, which is the carnivorous diet, where you just consume red meats. You're not allowed to have anything else, and purely with the consumption of red meat, so many people get to report increases in their quality of life. We might be, this is what I draw the conclusion then, we might be approaching times where we finally get to properly understand things for what they are in terms of we are still incredibly incapable of deciphering information. Despite how much of an advanced society we are, it's amazing to see how some things should be obvious. In that case, I did hint at the answer, I didn't give it entirely. The conclusion thus being, supposedly, if creatine is to be so great, if creatine is to be so beneficial in any way, so useful, and yeah, capable of increasing the quality of life of those who regularly, consistently consume it at healthy enough levels without any sort of counterindication, after effects, yeah, then you might as well say that it must obviously be the case that in a diet in which you get to have such an increased access to this protein, you might as well see that it actually happens, that people thus obviously have their quality of life increased. It's not so much about every other part of, oh no, yeah, I did cut off with the super saturated, overproduced, modern products of the market of the fast foods and whatnot, which is also part of the aim of such diets, which is true, but at the same time, there are other things that we're still ignoring, and there are other things that we're still incapable of actually deciphering, and for some reason, some of them are like harder to actually make sense of. Like, I feel I hate when I have to talk about these things because I feel like a crazy person for saying things that I don't really have the complete certainty of. But isn't that the reasonable conclusion? Isn't that such a basic aspect to analyze? How is it that why can I see it? Why is it that I can somehow get that conclusion myself, but we are incapable of actually hearing them from other places? If it is possible for an individual by simply allowing themselves to analyze what they get to have in front of them in terms of the available information related to the topics which they get to see, which they get to care about, how is it that somehow we are still so incapable of actually taking useful actions towards the things that we care about in themselves? That is, I feel like, while it is true that nowadays the information is incredibly clouded and the deciphering of the proper conclusion is not so available, it is still possible to actually reach a proper conclusion as long as the person is willing to keep on asking and seeing and finding out even more things, like the wonderfulness of actually getting to admire and consume even more of the information itself is to then one day finally find something maybe small enough to then see how revolutionary it is to grasp that no, we weren't actually all that bad. We weren't actually all that incapable of things, all that affected by negative things. Like, one of the other examples that I remember from not so recently, but recently enough, there was I have spent enough of my time having to research stuff related to the brain and whatnot, so that I get to minimally have a clear idea on my own experience about that, for the sake of having conversations about that and such. So, in that aspect, there is something wonderful that happens, and that is, did you know that supposedly, based on all the given pieces of discovery that we used to have up to the beginnings of 2026, let's say, supposedly, if you were to analyze the inside of your brains, there is something incredibly funny. You might as well encounter enough microplastics inside it that you might as well, if you were to boil all of that down, almost every single one of us might be walking around with enough microplastics to make up for a little spoon. What are you talking about? Isn't that schizophrenic? Isn't that worrisome enough to actually become delusional in terms of what? I am being so poisoned, I am going to die. Aren't we all going to die? Okay, wait. Because it finally turns out that something wonderful also had been happening in the analysis of all of these pieces of evidence, in the way in which we treat the comprehension of things like how we try to approach the inspection of microplastics present within any sort of material. And that is, funnily enough, there was a study performed in which I don't remember, I think it wasn't a meta-analysis, it was an analysis in itself, in which somebody, like a young person, a young group of students or something like that, asked a question that nobody else for some reason ever thought about asking before? What if the globes, the plastic globes that we have to utilize for our scientific methods, for our safety reasons, what if those things are also contaminating the materials which we are touching? What if those things are also having an influence on the outcomes which we perceive? Wouldn't you expect to see that, oh wow, surprisingly cheap, incredibly cheaply produced plastic globes also are affecting the materials, are also affecting the pieces of quote-unquote evidence and the results? Wouldn't you be amazed at seeing that now we might as well be seeing perhaps 90% of the already performed studies about such topics be completely invalidated? So now we have to go back and try to ask ourselves, is it true that if you were to die tomorrow and we got to have your brain, you will have inside of it so much plastic as to make a fucking cap out of it? No. And surprisingly, for some reason, we finally get to see that it wasn't actually the case. Maybe it also isn't the case, that what matters in the carnivorous diet is just the meat. Maybe it is the proper consumption of proteins, the proper consumption of so many other things that otherwise are absent. That's why I also say, we're in interesting times. It's great to see how things are going to slowly turn out. This one is true, and this one is a problem. How much time will it take for these discoveries to keep happening? How much time will it actually be required for us to finally reach proper discoveries of this sort all throughout the fields, all throughout the important aspects? Like, I haven't tried to talk about more clear things, more objective things, more palpable aspects of the world, so to speak, more direct, observable, the wonderfulness of something like the conclusions that you get to gain in this world of the natural sciences and such is completely unmatched against a field that is plagued with even worse things than this, and that is the social sciences field. And even more so because this also comes from my personal experience of, isn't it wonderful to have to try to study something like the knowledge of psychologists, plural, because somehow it turns out that in one theory it is the worst action that you could take to do a certain thing, while in the other one it is the literal main method that you have to utilize to heal yourself. How come we have so many contradicting existing frames of reference to act on the world? And now I get to finally remember something that also happened with this. Do you know what's the most astounding thing that happens? Do you know what's the most incredible thing that we have all in front of us right now because of this same thing? Because we have so many conclusions like this, because we're flooded with different analysis about the world, and we have so many of these ideas, it's no wonder that I can be so adamant about my position, because I possess the evidence for that, because I possess the factual proofs for things that I say and I think and I live, because we have reached a point in time where we have all of those things completely given to us in the most solid state, quote unquote. But while I get to have my truth be completely validated, you, as somebody who might be willing to oppose me, also has all the validity in the world to try and fight me, all the validity in the completely opposite side. We have still way too many conclusions which haven't been properly confronted one with the other. And we are somehow, we as individuals end up in a place in which, as I possess my truth, my not just the more simple aspect of my life is my truth and whatnot, that's understandable enough, but the idea itself of, in a world in which so much of the information is being thrown out and being offered to us endlessly, you get to grab certain facts that compose your reality. In the composition of that, I get to have certain solid beliefs that I even possess the quote-unquote factual demonstrations for, that indicate that what I am believing should be right. But while that happens, you might also possess the completely opposite ones, which are also factually confirmed as much as mine, and there is no answer in that. And it's wonderful to see how incredibly distant we are becoming, simply because wouldn't you want to see it happen yet again, that you believe in one thing and I believe in a completely different one, and there is no way to know which one is right, because factually speaking, both of us are as equally wrong and as equally right as the other one? I believe, if there is anything contributing to the whole, in this world there is such a distance and there is such isolation from one another, isn't that part of the human experience such an easy thing to look at? Isn't that such a basic aspect to analyze in terms of, if I assume, if I see, and I know that what I have in my hands is true. If what I believe as, what I live simply as the reality, is completely against the reality of others, and both of us are completely validated, yet at the same time, none of us is in a position to actually try to make it work in terms of, okay, maybe I as a normal person can try to somehow see if it could be the case that I might actually get to test my theory against yours. No, because you know what's the most wonderful aspect of all of this? You're a normal person. How will you dare contradict the scientific method? How will you dare contradict all the laborious efforts of entire laboratories, of so many, all throughout the lifespan of different scientist studies and papers and discoveries that take such huge efforts to be demonstrated? Do you think you will have the possibility of proving that? So you end up having the complete annihilation of the possibility of seeing if what I am actually experiencing is all that real, because what I hear from you also sounds real enough to be convincing, real enough with also all the solid backing that my experience has. And it's still, that's the problem. It's still too early to actually get to the resolution of all of those confrontations. And the only place in which these things are happening is in the personal space. There is no interest in making any of those changes happen in the more professional, more scientific landscape. There are very little topics being actually confronted and being modified or affected in any way. It's That's also why I said before, one of the other problems is how many more things might actually change in the future because we could finally discover the synthesis of all the given problems that we are having right now. We are only living in an era in which we have the thesis and the antithesis, and if it were to happen that we received the synthesis of all the situations which we must go through, life's quality would be increased, but at the same time, sadly, it's not so much the case. And so, what's the actual conclusion? I feel like that's all that I got to myself. I have no actual conclusion right now. One of the many points is simply, I guess, to stop worrying out the objective reality. In the end, one of the most wonderful things is to get to see how subjective the whole of experience always is. In one way, the whole conversation and discussion on, no, you don't get it. My truth is the only one that matters, and my truth is validated by these substantial pieces of evidence. Everything else is completely demolishing of yours, and everything else is completely meaningless because it doesn't possess the objectivity that mine does. So, do you truly believe that you should in any way have the possibility of talking to me? No, that doesn't matter so much. Sometimes it's better to be around even if you know that the other person is wrong, because in the end it doesn't change the world. Sometimes being wrong, we have, this is the point, if we have so many other things already happening in a completely wrong state, why will it matter if only one more of those ounces was carried over now by us? It's far more important something else, not the constant carrying out of that. I think of it as that sense of justice and objectivity which somehow we got inherited at some point in the educational system that we have to go through. The whole aspect of, you have to be a racist human being that serves the system in an honorable way and whatnot. Well, that is true. At the same time, if being such a honorable person completely isolates you, is that all that important? Is that all that wonderful? All that glorious? If the life experience that you have is so miserable to begin with, does that actually have so much of a role in life? I don't think so. But, anyways, that's one point. Because the other one also is, I feel like somehow also, funnily enough, we're not really, we're in a time of discoveries, we're not in a time of certainty. For many of these pieces of evidence still only exist under these marks of reference of, it's not reliable information. If you're telling me that this company sponsored this study, that this other company also did the same for the opposite one, that these groups, conglomerates and whatnot, moved all the pharmaceutical industries in this way or this other one, then does it really matter that much? Which conclusion can we reach? If everything is tainted, why should I concern myself so much about what we end up with? Isn't it simpler to just try to live my own life? If individualism is such a present theme throughout all of our history in the current era, isn't it better to just return back to that sense of individuality in which you can prioritize yourself instead of having to be such a slave of this truth, which still is in no way the final truth. For tomorrow it might finally come out that no, and you know what? These other piece might also still be wrong. But that's too dark. We need something else. I don't know. I feel like one of the only other few ideas that can also apply here is it also does matter quite a lot to possess too a little bit of an clearer view, of a clearer analysis when it comes to, and sometimes it's good to just keep on observing. At some point things get to finally make sense. The issue is it's burdensome, it's tiresome, it's absolutely depressing to know that you have spent so much time and the answers that you have gotten might still not be the correct ones. But it's better to have that offered to you than to be forced to settle for something that actually does not help you with your existence in any substantial way, that only has you forced to the enslavement of this service to a truth which makes your life no better. So it is then thus better to just attempt a little bit more. At some point, even with all the current problems, many other questions find an answer in this excruciatingly long adventure of trying to see what might in one way or another work out as an answer. That's where caveat, that's where the problem arises also, because again, if we are never told something, is that yeah, those real final conclusions do take years to reach, and it's irritating to see how much of a downplay it gets in the modern world. Yeah, you know what? Maybe in the next book that you pick up, you will find the answer that you're looking for. Maybe in the next article that you read, in the next paper that you encounter, you are going to reach the final solution. Some things, some incredibly niche questions, hyper-specific ones, need no afterthought, but many others that have been part of the humankind for much longer, that have been having us worried and occupied for many more moons, those ones don't get as easily resolved. But it's possible still. Doesn't mean that it's impossible. Doesn't mean that it won't happen. It simply means that it's necessary to be willing to do that. Because in the end, once again, the quality of life is increased. So that's good enough. And I don't know. I don't think I have much more to say. Yeah, I'm happy. I got out of my chest what I wanted, so yeah, thank you. We are done. For today we're done. That's it. I don't know what's gonna be next. Probably as I said before, I have been thinking, so if we're lucky, we will have something similar soon enough. If not, I don't know, to make the senses fall asleep and the mind go quiet with the busyness of the world might be better for any other idea is harder to handle and any other aspect of it is far more overwhelming than to just be. So just the being and just doing is much more normal and it's much more understood when it comes to the realm of actually trying to get towards some proper conclusion, then at that point the picture gets far blurrier, far more difficult to actually try to hold. So maybe we play something, but I don't know. I don't feel like doing that for now, so we will see. Anyway, we're done. Yeah, now for real. So I guess thank you for everything. It has been a good enough session. As always, remember to take care, to hydrate, to rest, to, I don't know, hope for things to go out. All of those things, as always. Yeah. Whenever we can, we're getting back here. Not tomorrow, probably, but it doesn't matter. Whenever we can. That's the point. Wednesday. I wouldn't count on that, King. Thursday. Who knows? I will see. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, point is, we're done. So, yeah, as always, thank you for everything. It has been very good, and yeah, remember, as I said before, to take care, to hydrate, to rest, to go out there, to see the world, to live life, to be happy, to all of that. Whenever you can, we're getting back here, and even if we don't, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you can do your part. Thank you very much, and yeah, for now, all that remains for us to say is goodbye.